This evening, the Biden administration is also occupied with containing the damage caused by the negative comments of a Democratic mayor about the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine after he initially refused thousands of doses of it.
Johnson & Johnson is a very good vaccine. Moderna and Pfizer are the best. And I am going to do everything I can to make sure the residents of the city of Detroit get the best.
The White House and health officials are all in agreement. All three vaccines approved for use in the U.S. prevent severe disease, and that you should not compare efficacy rates of different vaccines tested at different times in different environments. Today, a top White House advisor insisted this all was a, quote, misunderstanding, and Mayor Duggan released this statement as well. He said, quote, I have full confidence that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is both safe and effective. We're now making plans for Johnson & Johnson to be a key part of our vaccine expansion of vaccine centers and are looking forward to receiving Johnson & Johnson vaccines in the next allocation. Unfortunately, this incident could feed persistent negative perceptions about the one-dose vaccine. Our Randy Kay has more on the confusion that has surrounded these vaccines, particularly now that many people have a choice.
With all the questions about the J&J vaccine and how it stacks up against the other COVID vaccines, the bottom line is this. All three of the approved vaccines on the market right now in the U.S. should prevent the virus from killing you. Pfizer's vaccine, which requires 2 shots, is 95% effective against the virus. Moderna, which also requires 2 shots, is 94% effective. J&J's vaccine, just 1 shot, was 66% effective in a global trial, but proved to be 85% effective against severe disease. And like the other two, 100% effective against death, meaning nobody who got these vaccines died from COVID.
Why isn't AstraZeneca approved for use in the United States?
My understanding was the FDA has asked AstraZeneca to do additional phase 3 trials.
Dr. Peter Hotez, who studies vaccines, says there was some confusion about AstraZeneca's results, including one partial study showing a smaller first dose of the 2-dose AstraZeneca vaccine bumped the efficacy from 62% to 90%.
62% using the standard doses and 90% with a low dose followed by a standard dose. So that was one of the concerns, that the 90% number was a low number of people enrolled. I think they wanted the result of a phase 3 trial conducted in the United States.
And if you're wondering how each of these vaccines stack up against the different variants now proliferating, Dr. Hotez says these 4 vaccines work really well against the original strain and the UK variant. The South African variant is more challenging. He says he thinks Moderna will partially protect against that strain and that Pfizer works well against it, though it produces fewer virus-neutralizing antibodies. So the level of protection is still unclear. And Johnson & Johnson's vaccine?
It was actually tested in South Africa, and there is a reduction in its level of protective efficacy, but there's still some. It was around, in a single dose, around 57% protective immunity. So reduction in partial protection.
AstraZeneca, he says, was only about 10% effective against the South African variant. The good news is vaccines from Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, and Pfizer not only protect you, but also seem to help stop the spread of the virus.
So the 3 of them?
Yeah.
And not Moderna?
No, I think likely Moderna does as well. We haven't shown it yet.
Data from Israel shows 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine are 92% effective at preventing infections, including in people who don't show symptoms.
Potentially, if we get enough people vaccinated, we can halt virus transmission. I think we can vaccinate our way out of this epidemic.
What's your advice to people when it comes to getting vaccinated?
You're not going to have a lot of choice in terms of what you get. Get what you can. All of these vaccines are going to save your life.
Randy Kay, CNN, West Palm Beach, Florida.
Perspective now from Dr. Ashish Jha, Dean of Brown University's School of Public Health. Dr. Jha, always great to see you. You know, you heard Randy's piece. We heard from the Detroit mayor, who's backtracked at least a little some. But this confusion over the efficacy rates of the various vaccine, how can it be fixed?
Yeah, John, thanks for having me on. It is confusing to a lot of people, and it's unfortunate because we are comparing apples to oranges when we say 95 versus 85. tested at different times with different levels of community infection, tested in different places against different variants. The Johnson & Johnson is really the only one that's truly been tested against the South African variant and the Brazil variant, and it holds up in terms of preventing hospitalizations and deaths. So I think we just have to remind people, all three of these are terrific vaccines. I would be happy taking any of the three. I've been recommending to my family that they get any of the three that becomes available.
Yeah, they prevent you from dying, you know, with 100% efficacy, which is the one that really matters in that case. So even more states today came out today and said they're going to roll back restrictions immediately or in the coming weeks. Dr. Fauci says he's worried that could lead to another spike. What do you see happening?
Yeah, this is unfortunate, you know, because we're so close to the end zone here. I mean, by mid-April, most high-risk people should be getting vaccinated, should have at least one shot in. By end of April into May, a lot of Americans are going to be vaccinated. So that's a much more reasonable time to start scaling back, kind of mid to late April. Right now, a lot of vulnerable people haven't gotten vaccinated. Infection numbers are still quite high, and these variants are circulating. That combination just does not make it a smart time to do what Texas and Mississippi are doing.
So a new CNN analysis of federal data found that the U.S. could reach herd immunity by summer through vaccinations alone, and it could be even sooner when factoring in individuals who may have some natural immunity from prior infection. Do you think that's realistic?
I do. We will have plenty of vaccines, so that's the good news. I think any American who wants a vaccine should be able to at least sign up for one and start getting their first dose in May. So if that vaccination goes well through June and July, we should have enough vaccinations for herd immunity. The problem, John, is going to be that there's still a minority of Americans who are skeptical, and we're going to have to engage with people and really help them understand how safe and effective these vaccines are. That's the challenge of May and June ahead.
What about kids? You know, what about those of us who have roommates who are, say, 13 or 14 years old, and they're not going to get vaccinated till the fall at the earliest, depending on how the testing goes? I mean, what happens with that huge part of the population that'll be going to school, mingling with parents, other people who won't have the vaccine?
Yeah, so I think older kids, let's say 16, 17, 18-year-olds, I do think at some point over the summer, many of them get vaccinated. Anybody over 12, any of the kids over 12, again, I believe we'll have enough data by mid to late summer to vaccinate them. Younger kids, it may be very much maybe the fall or even winter. The good news is they, of course, don't get as sick if they get infected. And my hope is that everybody else does a good job of getting vaccinated. Infection rates come so far down that kids are protected just through that herd immunity.
One more question. Dr. Fauci said before he would be comfortable lifting restrictions, he'd like to see the case rate down to less than 10,000 cases a day. Is that realistic at this point? I mean, I don't think we were at 10,000 cases. We've been there since like last March at this point. I mean, is that lower than we can reasonably expect to get to anytime soon?
No, I think we can get there. And the reason is vaccines. We're just vaccinating. We got to keep going on that. I do think we can get there. Once you get to about 10,000 cases a day, you probably have about 100 to 150 people dying a day. That's the kind of annualized average for the flu. At that level, I think we can tolerate a little bit of risk. We have to continue to be careful, but we can start opening up a lot more. It may take us a few months to get to that level. I think for me, the key metric is let's get all high-risk people vaccinated, and then we can start relaxing some of the public health measures.
Dr. Jha, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.